Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good day, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Black Belt Academy of Surgical Skills. My name is David Regan. I'm a retired cardiac surgeon and a professor in the Medical Education Research and Development Unit in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Malaya. We're coming to you live tonight from Kuala Lumpur, and thanks to iEcho, we are reaching right across the globe. Unfortunately, our production team in New Delhi have an emergency and cannot attend this evening, so I'm going to be doing it all. I see some of our regular customers have joined, and thank you very much. And please pass the word. Since we last met, I'm pleased to say one of our first papers that have looked at a systematic review of OSAT scores has been accepted with provisionally with major changes. I was delighted at the weekend to join Prof. Sile in the Silent Mentor program, which has been running all week in the Faculty of Medicine, and we ran another indelible signature program for closing wounds on the Saturday afternoon. I was particularly delighted that all the students turned up on the Friday afternoon for basic skills training on the banana. And what was interesting, you could see the difference. Mark, who does all the television work and camera work for Silent Mentor, commented that during the week, the hospital ran a session for the junior doctors. And he spotted, and the coordinator spotted, a student who'd been to one of the classes and stitched on a banana because their stitching was extremely accurate. And that's exactly it. We practice not until we get it right, but until we can't get it wrong. We're also running our first face-to-face on the 29th of November from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock in the Clinical Skills Unit at the Faculty of Medicine, University of Malaya. We're hoping these students embark upon a journey of transformation of surgical skills over a period of, to green belt, 6 months, but to black belt over 18 months. They are going to get on joining a set of instruments. And I've spent a lot of time searching for a set of instruments that will give you the perfect feel and enable you to feel the tissues. This evening is called Place, Space, and My, or Ma. And this is one particular element of martial arts that I think applies aptly to surgery. You see, the concept of Ma or Mai is the dynamic distance between opponents when fighting. You may notice that I've got a bruise over my left eye. That was an inadvertent blow with a sword, blunt sword that is, a bokken, as we were practicing at the weekend. Clearly, I didn't get my Mai right, because the Mai is knowing when to move in, when to withdraw, maintaining control without force, and actively, decisively when the moment is right. And you can imagine that this now translates very nicely into the surgery, because the sword, like the scalpel, is effective only when guided by awareness of distance, timing, and intent. The kanji, which you see here, literally means space or interval, and there's something beautiful about the kanji in the symmetry and the spacing between all the lines. This is not just physical space. It could also mean time gaps, space between people, objects, or space between actions, both literally, figuratively, and emotionally. So when pronounced Ma, it often carries philosophical or aesthetic nuance rather than measurable ones. Ma, literal meaning, is space, gap, or pause, the space between things, an awareness of timing and distance, and a presence. Mai, which is M-A, AI is the interval between opponents, or in a deeper sense, a situational distance, timing in relationships and combat. Madori is the layout of a room, arrangement of spaces, and Magai is good timing, natural flow, sensitivity to movement. In Japanese philosophy, Ma holds the meaning that transcends translation, and it refers to the space between, not as emptiness, but as a living interval filled with awareness and possibility. See, Ma exists in the silence between musical notes, a pause in a conversation, and a stillness before a martial artist moves. It is the rhythm that gives, in Japanese aesthetics, whether it's a music or the tea ceremony, conversation, or martial arts, it's a meaningful emptiness between actions and sounds. It's not an absence, but a potential pause that gives rhythm, balance, and harmony. The silence in music between notes is the punctuation that we see in sentences. In martial arts and social interaction, the mai is the distance and timing between you and another. It's both spatial and psychological awareness, knowing when and where to act or not to act. And a skilled practitioner or socially attuned person feels the ma, sensing the rhythm, the energy, the unspoken cues in a situation. So in everyday cultural sets and conversation, the ma is the pause that gives you space for empathy and thought. In architecture or design, ma is the deliberate use of emptiness, not wasted, but calming. And ma, in relationships, is the emotional distance that allows respect and reflection. It is the stillness in martial arts before the moves. It is the rhythm that gives way to action. So it's an awareness. It's an intuitive sense of time, of distance and presence, a living, dynamic interval full of meaning. So you can therefore understand the ma in surgery is the space between action and awareness, and could be understood as the awareness of the space and time in between actions, the rhythm that governs movement, interaction, and decision. It's not merely a pause, but an interval, a moment of perception, a readiness, of precision. For technical skills, this could be the space between the instrument and the tissues, the feeling of tension, depth, and resistance before applying force. And the surgeon feels and senses this before acting. In team communication, the pause before speaking or responding, reading the room, allowing others to contribute, avoiding overlap, engendering calm and coordination in the operating theatre. In decision-making, the ma is the moment between perception and action, waiting just long enough to let the judgment mature, not rushing to cut or to close, but doing it just at the right time. For tissue handling, gentle intervals between your movements, smooth, unhurried transitions, preserving tissue integrity. Rhythm, not speed, defines mastery. In all operations, there's a natural pause. Use those natural pauses to attend to other things as you progress in your dissection or stitching. For teaching and mentoring, It is the silence between instruction and feedback, allowing the learner to process, discover, and self-correct before the next cue. In a well-conducted operation, there's a rhythm, an ebb and a flow. Incision, observation, adjustment, action. The surgeon should not be frenetically rushing from one step to the next, but allow space for tissue response, team synchronization, and this interval rhythm makes the difference between mechanical surgery and artistic surgery. I like to think of it when it comes to technical things as diastolic learning. You see, the time it takes you and me to make a stitch is systole, and that is fixed in everyone. But the time it takes you and me to do the second stitch is the diastolic interval. As an expert and a trainee, there's a vast difference in that interval. But we don't ask people to think about the diastole, the ma, and how to practice and learn it. You see, the master surgeon operates like a musician, aware not only of the notes or the actions, but the silence between them, aware of the setup and the diastolic interval. In the operating theatre, it's spatial, the distance between the surgeon, the assistant, the instruments. It's temporal, the timing of the suction, retraction, the suture. Psychological, awareness of stress, fatigue, and the team mood. And a surgeon with refined ma senses when the tension builds and when to slow down, when to anticipate help, and embodied awareness of situational dynamics, which are changing second to second in theatre. In teaching and in what we try and do in the Black Belt Academy is economy of motion, eliminating unnecessary gestures. Comfort with silence to help you with attention and the focus. And when teaching, allowing learning to unfold naturally. So this is why this awareness of timing, spacing, and rhythm transforms technical skill into mastery. It's a mindful space between action and reaction, a moment where observation, perception, judgment align before the next move, and it reflects the ability of the surgeon to balance speed with stillness, action with anticipation, and control with sensitivity. The space and the feel of the tissues, the pause when you feel resistance, the pause, the perception when you think this isn't quite right, to use the natural flow and use the situational awareness. It transcends technique from mechanics to meaning. Movements become purposeful, transitions fluid, and the team operates in quiet harmony. It exists in the stillness before a cut, in the breath between commands, the subtle rhythm of the hands and the instruments. Experienced surgeons know when to move, when to wait, and when to allow the tissue to reveal its own truth. And that awareness, the ability to dwell in the space between action and reaction, distinguishes mastery from mere competence. It's expressed through timing, precision, and restraint. It is found in the deliberate pace that prevents haste, the unspoken coordination among the team members, respect for the living body as more than material to be repaired. Such, when Ma is present, the operation flows effortlessly, each step naturally arising from the last. It's a choreography of intention and understanding. In the absence of haste, is not inefficiency. It's a discipline and grace. Just as the musician shapes silence into melody, the surgeon shapes pauses into precision. See, in surgery, I've become aware that Ma is everywhere, in everything I do, in every action. It's the invisible rhythm that turns a series of technical maneuvers into something graceful, safe, and humane. In the early stages of training, the focus is on doing, do, stitch, 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 mastering techniques, handling instruments, completing tasks. But as you mature, it becomes clear that true mastery lies not so much in the doing, but in sensing when to pause, when to wait. Let the patient speak, let the tissue speak. That's a disciplined awareness of timing and presence. And that awareness of timing and presence is what's taught in martial arts in Iaido, expressing through coordination and rhythm. You'll see that the most skillful surgeons do not hurry. There's a steady flow and a natural rhythm, a quiet communication between the members, a glance, a gesture, a breath that guides the next action. Even silence becomes meaningful. It is a shared understanding amongst the team where no words are needed. I've become to realize that this is an advanced form of situational awareness, encompassing physical distance between the space, the surgeon, assistant, patient, tissues, instruments, as well as the psychological and emotional distance. When Ma is present, the surgeon is able to sense the tension in the air, fatigue in a colleague, or the subtle shifts in the operative field. This sensitivity is not instinct alone. It's cultivated through mindfulness and respect for the environment and the people within it. It should shape the way we teach. And as an educator, I've learned that the pauses between instruction and feedback are as important as the words themselves, allowing the learner to think, to simulate, to reflect, to even struggle. And in the struggle, build confidence and understanding. This gives space for growth. Reflecting on my own practice, I realized that Ma is not only technical, but it's emotional, physical, and spiritual. It demands self-control, humility, and trust in one's team, in your assistant, in the process. It is the natural rhythm of surgery. And when Ma is respected, an operation is not a series of steps, but a conversation between the surgeon, the patient, the tissue, the teacher, the student, the life, and the delicate boundary of mortality. It reminds us that surgery is as much an art as a science. Precision and timing matter, but so do patience and awareness. It is a stillness between actions, and that is where wisdom resides. The quiet pause between the cut, the breath before the stitch. These are the moments of meaning that connect intention to outcome. By embracing Ma, we return to the very heart of surgical professionalism. To act with awareness, to respect space and people, and bring grace to the discipline of healing. It reminds us that excellence in surgery lies not only in what we do, but also what we allow to unfold. So practice, mindfulness, humanity, and harmonious surgery. It's interesting that another discipline in Japan is ikebana. And ikebana is the art of arranging flowers, where they're placed in harmony, where the space between the flowers is arranged to embody harmony, peace, and is considered one of the top 3 forms of cultural arts in Japan, along with the tea ceremony and calligraphy. I hope you realize that Ma itself is part of surgical practice. So, what do we think about spacing? Well, coming back to the basic principles, and I always put my hands like this in a master. Align your thumbs, fingers, ring finger, middle finger, and baby finger tip to tip. Now, if your needle is not opposite, immediately opposite, what happens is we get a dislocation. If your needle is not equidistant from the edges, and if you look at the creases over your interphalangeal joints, they should be aligned. And if you're not equidistant from the edges, you get a slip. So the problem is with most surgery is that we get dislocations and slips. This is where the wound doesn't look very nice, the anastomosis is not nice, you haven't inverted the tissues, you've got spaces, and if I'm holding my hands up like that, you should not see my rings, okay? Because your sutures are perfect, and it's endothelium to endothelium, mucosa to mucosa, skin to skin. But to do that, as we've said, that all needles are made on a circle, and the alignment of the needle is important. The good news is that because it's made in a circle, our alignment follows one very simple principle. It has to be 90 degrees to the tissue, 90 degrees across the tissue, and 90 degrees into the tissue. And last week, as we were discussing, the point is literally giving you that precision. I'm putting my needle there. But before you put your needle there, you need to place your needle down. And you place your needle now 90 degrees to the tissue and 90 degrees across the tissue. And it's that placing that gives you an opportunity to think about the spacing and the distance between your stitches. So what sort of distance do you put between your stitches? It depends on the tissues, depends on the thickness of the tissues. It depends, therefore, on the needle and on the thread. But in essence, you want the two edges to sit perfectly together. Too many stitches might look very neat and tidy, but the stitch itself is causing damage. So it's a bit like Goldilocks. You can have too much or too little and just enough. And that is something that you need to practice and be aware of with your stitching. But I do ask you then, do you deliberately, when stitching, are you one of those surgeons that go stitch, 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 stitch? Or do you go set up, give yourself some space, correct the needle alignment as we talked about, and place the needle down and space. Remember, it's 1, 2, 3. That your needle has to be at the tip of the needle holder, just beyond halfway. There's no space between your needle and the shaft, and that angle there between my nail and the needle, as we explained, is mathematically that angle there. So that is the first part, the 1, 2, 3. Then is the place, point, rotate. Now, if I take you over to the camera, we've got this lovely kanji, which in Japanese and in Chinese means ma. And I've just started drawing a series of lines there. I'll continue to draw lines, and I'm practicing my spacing. You can do the same. You'll see the more you do, it becomes easier. But what happens when I put a rule next to that? What I want to be able to see is that I have been able to draw a line on a blank piece of paper at 5 millimeter intervals. try it yourself. How accurate are you in your placing? That one's off. Okay, that one's off. So simply doing that with a pen on a piece of paper, start practicing yourself. What is 5 millimeters apart? What is a centimeter apart? What is 2 centimeters? And start practicing and realizing that distance. To help you, you may use an instrument as part of your placing. So if you look at this, using my forceps here, well, okay, it's maybe 2.5 ends of the forceps. And this forceps is kind of broader, and you can use this to help you with your ma, okay, as a spacer. But what you're doing every time is correcting and accurately putting the marks down. So what does it mean for stitching? Well, I like the banana model, as we said before. We put this through a CT scanner. It's got 240 Hounsfield units, whereas your soft tissues are between 40 and 80, and the banana is 40 to 60. So that suture pad that you're using, please discard. Some students were using it the weekend, and I pointed out the obvious to them. So just, for example, make a linear incision in the banana, and you take a stitch across and see how accurate it is. And when you see how accurate it is it equidistant from the edge? So if I draw a line along there, are all these lined up? Is the space there, the ma, correct? Okay. Is it lined up all along that side? Yes. More on that side, on that side. And I think if I put a rule to that, 0.5 centimeter or 6 millimeters, 6 millimeters, it is the same. But is it 90 degrees across? Well, no, it's not there. Is that 90 degrees across? No, that's not 90 degrees across. Is that 90 degrees across? Yes, that's 90 degrees across. Is that 90 degrees across? No, it's there. Is that 90 degrees across? Yes, it is. Okay, so this is not only giving you the exact spacing. And what you need to practice when doing this is put your needle down, rotate it back. Remember to point into the tissue. The pointing is literally pinpricking the banana. We'll have a look at this in a moment, because if I'm not 90 degrees to the tissue, and that often happens because I hold the needle a long way back, and this is what happens. I'm not 90 degrees, and you can see, and we'll look at it at the moment, I am hacking at the tissue, not going in. So one way of practicing this is literally make your incision in the banana, okay? Many athletes, golfers, use cues in their practice of putting poles on the floor or alignment such they can get their shoulders and body alignment right, and make a series of lines. What you need to do then is place your needle 90 degrees across, rotate it back, take your needle through the tissue, and take it out. And what you should see, it should come in and out on the line at the same distance, in and out at the same distance. Remember that the tissues hold the needle, so to save time and space and movement, I can deliver the needle on the curve, apply the ratchet again, and I'm in the right position to line. No forceps were involved in that at all. So place, point, and I'm rotating. And I look, that's slightly shorter, that's slightly longer. So correct, think about it next time. Place, rotate back, point, and take forward. Better spacing. Needle comes out, and I'll just show you this pickup concept of the needle. The pickup, draw the needle out to just the point you had it mounted. Apply your needle gently, continue the delivery of the needle on the curve, and I haven't grabbed it, and now I apply, and I'm ready to do that again. No forceps was involved. So I've reduced the diastolic interval by deliberately using the circle and rotation of the needle. There you go, same distance from the edge and on the line. Going to pick it up again. Here we go to that halfway mark. I don't grab the needle, I gently apply the needle holder, take it out, and I can, with practice, nudge it into the position. If I lose my angle, I don't force myself to do it again. I correct the pickup on the 1, 2, 3 of the needle. So apologies to people waiting. I am the only person on production this evening, so if you just joined, sorry to kept you waiting, and I've just seen you there, so welcome. So 90 degrees across the tissue again. Rotate it in and out. Same distance from the edge and on the line. Take the needle to where I want to pick it up. There you go. And I'm ready to go again. Note the angle there. Now, the problem is, particularly when you're doing continuous sutures, people are not doing this with each and every stitch. And it might seem laborious at the present moment to do this with each and every stitch. But if you do this on a banana and draw the lines, go up and down, you are practicing your ma, your spacing. You place and you space, place and space, place and space. So once you've got it on the line, go between the lines. Can you come in and out, same distance again, and make sure that you're perpendicular between the lines. I think I'm slightly off that side. Okay? Perpendicular between the lines, and rotating around, and I'm picking it up. Note that I'm not frenetically stitching. I'm being deliberate. I'm being purposeful. I'm thinking of my ma, the spacing, the arrangement, and placing. See, quick surgery is not frenetic. Smooth is fast and fast is smooth. By slowing it down and by appreciating your ma, you are building technical skills that are going to stand you in good stead. Because excellent surgeons really just deliberately and purposefully use the time and tissues accordingly. Now, the other thing to point out, and what your suture pad does not show, is, and we're trying to reinforce this concept of rotation, but if we zoom down, your suture pad cannot show you that. Okay? That can only happen if the needle goes in cleanly. And that can only happen if the needle comes out cleanly. Because, by way of an example, let me exaggerate some poor movements here. I'm going to push this down. I'm going to the tissues, grab it, and I'm going to pull it out. Okay? You can see immediately that has torn the banana there. And I've got a skid. So coming back to our previous, if you're going pinprick in, that's what you're doing. That's the needle going in cleanly into tissue. Whereas if you're not aligned, it's sort of gouging there. You show me a suture pad that can do that. It can't. And there you go, pinpricking. And that's where the banana is giving you that spacing and that ma. Well, we can do it on paper, do it on bananas, And just to add a little bit of color to this concept, I am also going to do it on a bit of Play-Doh. So the important thing to remember is 1, 2, 3, your pickup of the needle. No space between the shaft and the tip. It's just on the halfway, and that halfway is governed by the fact you pronate and supinate. Okay? If you're too far back like that, I can't pronate it back and get 90 degrees into the tissue. That can't happen. All right? You see that's coming at an angle. But if I align it properly and I've got this angle, then I should be able to see that I'm 90 degrees to the tissue. And all I should see as I space my needle back is my needle is simply 90 degrees to the tissue, the Play-Doh. I should not see if it's mounted incorrectly. I place my needle down. See the difference? That looks like a Japanese character, doesn't it? But I've also now got a lot of stuff on my needle holder. So let me do it again. The Play-Doh was to DIY. It's my favorite store here in Kuala Lumpur. You can get anything, everything, and it makes for a fantastic opportunity for creating and thinking about models to demonstrate. So again, we're going to take this model. I love our instruments, the Black Belt Academy. We've even got our engraving on it. Interesting, our kanji looks about that, like this, doesn't it? There you go. So I'm placing, and imagine I'm drawing lines 5 millimeters apart. And I'm thinking about my spacing, almost as if I was drawing lines. And I can see my last stitch, and therefore I can place my next stitch. And that pause is giving me a moment to determine my ma. Okay? It's giving a moment to determine my ma. So my needle is perfectly aligned, 90 degrees to the tissue. I know it is because I'm pressing it on the surface and you're just seeing the belly. Okay? Now what you can practice is place and point. So if I'm placing and pointing and holding my needle right, I should place, I rotate back to pronate, and at the end of that line, I'm going to point. Place, end of that line, I'm going to point. Place, at the end of that line, I'm going to point. Place, at the end of that line, I'm going to point. Place, at the end of that line, guess what? I'm going to point. Place, and point. Place, and point. So this little model here, I am not only placing my ma, I'm also pointing it, and it's giving me feedback as well. Did I go point there? I skidded there. That's a point, that's a point, that's a point, that's a point, but that's a skid. All right? So you can see, put a rule up against this. Let's see how we do, how we measure. Well, okay, you can determine that yourself. Okay? 5 millimeters apart, all the way down. This is a live demonstration. I've not cut. This is not the BBC, where there's a delayed action on buildings falling down. There you go, 5 millimeters apart. The thing is, what we now got to think about our movement is we've aligned the needle, I've placed it down, and as I rotate around to point, I'm doing one important thing, and we've demonstrated what we did with the needle. If you listen carefully, as I'm pronating to point, I have unlocked the needle holder. So now I'm holding the needle, not on the ratchet, but on the point. And I can then iteratively deliver the needle through the tissue without the need to unlock while the needle's in the tissue. Because if I unlocked while it's in the tissue, it's going to cause damage as well. So it's a bit like throwing a ball. You don't throw a ball, open your hands, and then continue. It's one fluid movement. So a nice little exercise. And if I didn't point and didn't pay to this attention, let me have a look at this. Let's do it badly. Place, rotate back, point. Place, rotate back, point. Place, oh dear, rotate back, point. Place, rotate back, point. You see the difference as we zoom down again? It is quite clear. Place, rotate back, point. There you go. And you can see this Play-Doh is actually ending up all over my needle holder. That's happening on tissues. That when you're doing it on the banana, that is happening as well. So one thing we've got to actually think about is that surgery is not stitch, 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 stitch. It's not frenetically stitch, stitch, stitch. And this is particularly true of continuous stitches, that you do not go like this, round and round and round and round and round and round and round. Okay? Does not happen like that. What you need to do is place, point, rotate. 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 You'll find that your placing and your pointing, your ma, then becomes embedded as part of the way of your technical skill. But it's, as I said, a bit like driving a car. You cannot develop your ma on situational awareness when you're struggling with a basic skill, like gear change and the clutch. Your road awareness is not going to be there. So mastering your technical skill, attending to your ma, enables you to develop your ma in a much wider sense. But this only comes with experience and practice. Alignment in ma is of critical importance in surgery. And this 90-degree alignment prevents this dislocation and prevents this slip. When two edges are together, it's fine because you can go 90 degrees across both. But as we'll see and I'll talk about next week, the problem comes when you've got a wound that is separated edges. With separated edges, the 90 degrees on this side is this vector. The 90 degrees on this side is this vector. And between those two vectors, it subtends an angle of about 85 degrees. I've seen it. Even with continuous stitches in the deep tissues, the needle goes through that layer and is torqued and forced in weird body contortions to take it through the other side. Each of those movements is doing that to the tissue. And then we expect it to heal and function afterwards? I think not. And all it requires is simple attention to your ma, your point, place, rotate. And with that, I'd like to invite my fellow sensei, Prof. Sile, to join the conversation and give her wonderful insight and wisdom in not only teaching, but this concept of ma and practice of stitches. We saw it at the weekend amongst our trainees because we had a wonderful session on Friday, stitching bananas, and it doesn't take much practice to suddenly realize once you know it and you commit yourself to that place, point, rotate, just do it. I don't care how long you take to close a wound. Do that with every stitch. I can promise you, you'll end up with a neater wound and more elegant surgery in the end by doing so. Thank you. Profile, please join the conversation. Any questions from anybody? See, Profile is there. You're on mute, Prof.
Yeah, okay.
Your
Now can you hear
observations.
me? Yeah. How can I see you? Whether you can see me or not. So
We can hear you and see you. Thank you, Prof.
okay. So I have two things to share you. The first one in my table, it
Yes,
is the Ikebana.
yes.
Yes. So this book, I bought this from the Ikebana Center when I visited Japan.
Oh, the flower is
In
amazing.
Kyoto. So I don't play your uh, martial art, but I do ikebana. So that
Wonderful.
is yeah. So this is another art of doing it with the. So it's like this is a choosing the color and then using the natural spaces. Make it balancing act with that with the flowers and with the minimal flower.
So, talk more. You're an expert in Ikebana, and it's wonderful to hear that. How do you use this space in your flower arranging?
Yeah, it has to balance. So this is like art and then also the space. So you have to be doing the art and the space and then how to balance it with the you don't have to put too many colors, yeah, and not too much of the stuff, but with the, again, the balance. So what I want to mention is that, anytime we cook, we do surgery, we do suturing, or we do ikebana, the same thing with the passion. You must have put up your passion. If I
Right.
do this, how make it beautiful to the humankind that make them happy or make them peaceful. So I taught this to my cancer patients as well during their chemotherapy and
Mm-hmm.
even post surgery, post chemotherapy, ikebana, and then it's like the folding the little parts, and I forgot the name, and so it's like it's just a passion, and of doing it. So when you do a suturing also, it's like not just suture and suture and suture, and then how you make it become, even like in a last day on a Saturday that we did it with the student session, and our silent mentors, very dedicated silent mentors, they deserve to have a beautiful sutures before coffining. No one see the sutures, but we see the sutures. We
Correct.
saw them, and we satisfy, and so dedicated to give the nice, beautiful sutures before the coffin. So I think they deserve it, and we did it with passion.
And pride. When you do
Yeah.
it well, you can take pride in your work. When you
Yes.
deliver a good flower display, you can look at that and you can feel and see the harmony and the presence of that.
Yes. Yeah. So no one see this, but we see and we satisfy. And then that is, yes, yeah, that is an honor. It is a great honor to them. And I have a one photo to share also, whether you can see it or
Yes,
not. Sorry. Yeah, this is a girl with that. I'm sorry whether you can see or
we
not.
can see it partly, yes.
Yes, yeah. This is the girl that who requested us to take a photograph with her. And I will share later the link to you, to your email. And she's the one who first came in. It's like very shivering hand. Want to suture your chest, the cardiothoracic surgeon in the station one, So that the silent mentor, when she wants to stitch it, actually it is with a very sharp, straight needle. And you see, I told her to be careful about that. Don't prick yourself or don't prick your friends. But she starts stitching it and so compassionately doing it, and she's satisfied. Initial 1, 2 sutures, they are not very beautiful and not very precise, but then later on, she keep doing it and then getting beautiful. In fact, the way of she pulled the suture with the another instrument, it is that even I learned from her what John mentioned about that, like every day is learning, and we learn from the student as well.
Indeed.
So I told them to protect, to the others team member with your sharp needle. Don't pull your sutures very high and very far. So keep it this in your your umbilical, your chest level. So then, but she showed us how she pulled the thread, then protecting to the others. That's just beautiful things, Prof. And she was so satisfied with her learning and then her suturing. So, like, yes, we win, Prof. Yeah. and so compassionate, yeah.
And that's it. You've summed it up beautifully well. It's a privilege in surgery to do what we do. And why we call it the indelible signature is because when the skin is closed and you've walked away, actually, I always think it's rather silly that the most senior surgeon leaves theatre to leave the most junior, most inexperienced surgeon to close the skin. When the patient will look at that wound and look at that scar, and then will remember you for what you said, what you did, and how you made them feel for the rest of their lives. You might indeed forget the patient, very likely, because you've probably done hundreds of the operations. But the patient will look at that scar and remember you for everything, absolutely everything. And that's why I refer to it as your indelible signature. And it's up to you. Do you want a scruffy signature to represent your training, your dedication, your hours that you've put in? Or do you want something that when somebody looks at it, they say that? I took a lot of pride in closing stenotomies, and everybody laughs that a stenotomy is just a single incision straight up and down. Well, you get it straight up and down perfectly in the middle without any bacon slicing, and you stitch it so you got no wound infection at all. And if you've closed the edges with a subcut suture, you should run the back of your fingernail over it and there should be no ridges at all. The two edges should sit perfectly together. And what I was delighted about is that even the staff and outpatients were recognizing the wounds of the patients that I had closed and supervised. That's your indelible signature. That's your mark. So do please, next time when you're thinking, stitch, 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 pause, mar, and get it right.
Thank you very much, Prof.
We'll take any questions from people in the audience. Any observations, please? Any questions in the chat? How will robots and AI alter the art of surgery? Well, you're quite right. And I've just saw a tweet today on exactly that. On exactly that. AI and robots cannot do MA. Not at all. So no matter what the future holds, no matter what is happening with robots and everything, robots don't give you the haptic feedback. I know Da Vinci 5 is working on it, but can it feel the grain of salt between your fingertips? No, it can't. All right. And the artistry, the music, the pauses, the spaces, the diastolic, the dances, that's all part of Ma. And that's all part of martial arts. Is it why they call it martial arts? Ma? I don't know. Maybe extending the metaphor a bit too far. But this is the art of surgery. And the art of surgery does not come with just one off. It is practice. And the thing is, you need a model that is going to be useful. And as I've said with these things before, you can't eat a suture pad, can you? Sustainable surgery, I'd say. Longer evening, feeling a bit hypoglycemic, I can eat the banana. You can try eating the suture pad. I bet you can't. So, thank you very much indeed for your attention. Please fill in the feedback form. Please encourage your friends to follow. I'd like to thank Prof. Seeley for wonderful wisdom, as usual. Brings a lot of compassion and humanity to surgery, and I think that's something we have to realize in our practice. I wish you all well. We'll continue our journey of stitching next week when we focus on the vectors and rotations, and I'll bring more models to you for your practice and for your contemplation. Thank you very much indeed for your time.